All right, so let's talk a little bit about movement today and how it affects your firearm. So I am a big person that talk a lot about the body and how the body affects your accuracy. So one of the reasons that I understood or started to understand about accuracy and where the body started to affect my accuracy is because I started with a rifle. So I started shooting production, learned how to break stages down, 10 rounds, lots of reloads. So my focus really wasn't on movement or understanding movement. So as I switched to that rifle, I no longer had to worry about reloads and I could just focus on shooting the gun. Now, that being said, I went from iron sights to a red dot, which was a whole nother ball game of visual, like what could I see and what was I seeing while I was shooting. So I spent a lot more time shooting the gun and understanding movement versus accuracy because I didn't have to deal with the recoil or the sighting system. It was a lot easier, obviously, with a red dot and 3 points of contact while I was standing still. Where I started to see the massive difference in my shooting was when I started to move with that rifle. That is the key to my movement system and how I learned how to move and figure out where my accuracies or inaccuracies were coming from. It was coming from my movement and it had nothing to do with the gun. So once I switched back from the rifle to the pistol, I was able to take all of those skills that I built and start using them during my pistol shooting. And I actually found out that the pistol shooting was easier on the move than the rifle because everything was affected if the upper body moved. With the pistol, you get a little more opportunity to kind of have a buffer between your body, that movement, and that gun. But you start to realize quickly that all movement affects your accuracy. So if you're on a target and you start to make that move, you start to cross your feet, what's the upper body gonna do that the gun is inside of your hands? So all these different things came from the rifle work that I did. So I want to talk a little bit about crossing your feet today because this is a big one. This is a big thing that I see in our sport that a lot of people just don't spend a lot of time focusing on because they're so wrapped up in the gun. All you have to do is start thinking about what the body does and your accuracy just kind of gets better on its own, even if you don't have the greatest of grips. And I'll kind of give you a couple of examples. So I have my handy dandy stick here today to kind of show you. And guess what, guys? You know my favorite drill is the bar hop, so let's talk about the bar hop today. So the reason I am not a huge fan of the bar hop, even though I think it's a very good drill and it has its good use, I'm not a huge fan of how it's executed for a lot of people. Now let's talk about why I'm not a huge fan of how people execute this drill. Two things. I think it's easy to cheat on this drill as a shooter. And what I mean by that is if your goal is to get to the other side of the stick, then your goal should be movement and not shooting on this drill. Unfortunately, when I see this drill done a lot, movement is not the key. It's shooting fast, transitions, all those different things that are in that drill, but movement isn't the answer, right? The number one thing on most of the people that I see shooting the drill, they're not pushing the movement speed, they're pushing the timing of how fast they shoot and when they exit, which is great because there is a key to exiting on targets because your body affects that. So let's talk about it. The easiest way to cheat this drill, okay, is to not leave this position while you're shooting the second target. So what I mean by that is you shoot the first target on this side, and then as you exit, you take your first shot, and then that's when your foot lifts, you take your second shot, you come across. That is not going to affect the accuracy because you're still square to that target. But what does affect that accuracy, if you leave the first target, as you start to aim and you start to push off, now when you cross those feet, you're gonna start having some issues. And I'm gonna show you with this awesome stick. So as I come in here, I'm gonna put the stick up against my chest. What I want you to look at is how this actually affects, or how my footwork affects what my upper body does with that pistol or with the rifle. The rifle's even worse, but you can kind of cheat with the rifle, but with the pistol, you really can't. You can't keep the same grip because one arm's gonna shorten over the other. So what ends up happening is I have the stick against my chest. As I cross my foot, and I come across my body, you're gonna see that as soon as I cross, my upper body gets thrown to the right. Now imagine that with a pistol or a rifle. So here's the stick in the middle, and I'm trying to hold the gun to the center. It's almost impossible for me to hold the gun to the center unless I'm holding a rifle, because then I can cheat and have bad form and get away with it. With a pistol, you're gonna end up with a shorter arm and a longer arm, which is gonna give you a completely different grip than you're used to, and that means that you just broke your fundamentals. So where I see a lot of people doing this is there's two things they'll do. They'll start in the center position, they'll shoot the first target, and instead of crossing their feet, what they do is they step forward. They turn their hips and they come forward onto the stick. Well, if you look the way I entered this position, I didn't actually cross my feet at all. All I did was take a step forward at an angle. That's cheating. You're not actually crossing your feet. That's why you're able to stay accurate. The problem is when you truly cross your feet in the middle of a stage and you don't have a drill where you can kind of cheat things, you are going to cross your feet and your accuracy is going to be affected. And I'm going to bring my stick back into the play here. And I want you to notice what happens as I start to kind of walk across the position here. If I cross my feet, I'm instantly throwing it back. So now I'm going to come across, I'm going to throw my feet, my hips again, and I'm just letting my upper body, I'm not even trying to fight it. This is what happens when you cross your feet and you have a gun in your hand. Now that means I have to forcefully keep myself left while I'm crossing my feet. And once I get to the center of that target, it's already too late. Now I'm going to be shooting behind me and I'm going to have bad fundamentals. This is why I talk about not crossing your feet during the shooting, crossing your feet during entries, because what ends up happening on an entry, if I come into a position and I want to come in and I'm just going to, let's just say I'm going to enter this stick. I'm going to come in and try to enter this stick. As soon as I try to enter this stick, it throws my body to the right. Now my accuracy is going to be off. I'm going to throw a shot and then I've got to square up anyway. Versus coming into this stick and running into the position and then squaring up before I enter, I'm never going to have well, I shouldn't say never because this is shooting, but I should have no makeup shots, nice and calm, good solid base every single time I enter. This is much, much harder to come in and get into a good base because everything's throwing me away from the position that I want to be in. This is why I don't like crossing my feet in this sport. All right, guys, if you have any questions, hit me up in those comments and I'll see you on the range.